November 7th meeting of the Tufton Borough Planning Board. Before we get started, does anyone have any questions about general planning board procedures or zoning questions or really anything before we get started? All right, with that, we're going to start with the approval of the minutes. There's quite a few to go through, so we will go in order of date. The first one we have is the September 19th, 2019 minutes. Did anyone have any changes?
On page 3, there is a word that I think is incorrect or incorrectly spelled. It's about a third of the way down the page. Starts out in a sentence that says, Matt stated enforcement is the, it says preview, but I believe it's the purview, P-U-R-V-I-E-W. That's the only thing I saw on that set.
I agree. Did anyone else have any changes?
I have none.
I wasn't there. No.
All right, can I get a motion?
So I'll move approval as corrected.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, October 3rd, 2019, planning board minutes. These were a little more extensive. I had a change on page 3. It stated Matt Young stated power is provided by New Hampshire Electric Co-op. Oh, sorry. He stated the line is energized, and the correct statement would be the line has been energized and inspected. The line is not currently energized. I think I had one other. And then on page 7, Matt Young said the regulations require 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit and asked how the applicant would address such, and whether the applicant would request a waiver to use the town lot. And then after that, Jim Rhines correctly stated, this is what I would add, that is part of zoning and cannot be waived. That's all I have.
I have a change on page 5. Where it states that the parking lot frequently has found that maybe weekends and 4th of July is busy. At that point, comma, most of the time, I want to add this, most of the time, I see room for maybe 40 more cars. That's how I stated it, so if we add it that way.
Where was that on the page?
It's in the middle of the page, page 5. Okay, halfway through that paragraph. Says, I found maybe weekends and the 4th of July is busy.
Okay.
Then, comma, most of the time I see room for maybe 40 more cars. I'm referring to the parking lot being empty most of the time. And you'll find that in the video. Other than that,
No, she did a great
It
job.
probably doesn't matter much, but we go from page 1 to 3 to 5 to 7 to 9. I don't know if that's worth repaginating, as it were, but the other things are regular, so.
Yeah.
you know,
Maybe it's just
And
the
the
way it was
same,
printed out.
it's just the way it's
it's
printed. I
just the
printed mine
October
in order.
3rd ones, the other ones are fine.
I'm gonna make it just, because I'm gonna give these to her.
Oh, okay.
And I'm gonna just write down the page numbers are wrong.
Yeah, you're skipping the even numbers.
Well, I printed out one side
Got a
on
copy.
the
think it's 'cause
page,
it's short, so-
and every one of them is right.
Yeah.
1,
Okay.
2, 3, so
What-
it
what-
may be that it,
We just got handed out is 1, 3,
okay.
5, 7,
So,
so,
so it was just,
Don't
it
know
was
what that is.
just reproduced out of order.
I'll just give her a note to check.
Yep.
on
Yep.
I think it's, where did you print them here?
that. Probably in print these and really old ones. All right, can I get a motion?
Yeah.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. October 17th, which is also a book.
Bigger book.
In the library.
Big book, yeah.
I believe Leanne went through this with the video as well quite thoroughly, because this is the most important of the minutes. And I don't think that I saw anything in here that was incorrect.
I think she did an excellent job. I have no issues with it.
Yeah, I couldn't find any.
She took some time on that. Anybody have anything?
They look good to me.
Get a motion?
So moved.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Okay, guys.
All right, first up, we have a boundary line adjustment for the Meredith Pierce Revocable Trust and Willard Trust, Meredith Pierce Revocable Trust and William Albee and Ronald Cooper. Tax map 68-2-1, lots 2 and 8. My understanding on this is that this was a boundary line adjustment that was done years ago, that we are now reverting back to the original boundary line.
Right.
Okay. We've reviewed the application is complete. We have trust paperwork and letter of authorization from all parties. Can I have a motion to accept the application as complete? Accept jurisdiction over the application. I'm sorry.
So move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Albee, would you like to show us what we're doing?
Sure. Originally, I don't remember exactly what year, but I thought it was around 2009. To maximize the usage of the 125 acres that I own and to accommodate for the road design, because it's a pretty significant elevation gain. Ron, who's here tonight, and I came up with an agreement to move our boundary line to accommodate the road more than anything else. Since that time, or currently, we've got a purchase and sale with the Lakes Region Conservation Trust on our land. Consequently, we're not gonna put a road up there, and it's not gonna be a development. And I need to give, or we need to give Ron his land back. So that's essentially what we're doing here tonight. I've got the, should I go through what I have? I have the monumentation certification here. And I could have brought in a deed description, but Jim Hambrook wanted to wait until after your decision to create that, and then he'll create the Mylars to accommodate for this.
The Mylars will be a condition of approval. so-
Right, right.
Are there any easements that pass over the property?
No.
Nothing?
And it also includes the sale that we're doing also includes the, I think it's 5 acres. It's right down on North Line Road that we bought from Steve Perkins. So it's a whole piece.
But that's a separate lot?
It is,
Okay.
yeah. But I'm sure what they'll do is just combine the whole thing, Lakes Region Conservation, so. And then they're gonna pressure me to get the Class 6 road changed to the parking lot so they can hike up there, but that's another day.
No, it's pretty clear cut.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I don't know if Ron has anything to add.
No, no.
Okay.
I don't really have, like, going exactly the way you went down the road in reverse, pretty
Right.
much, so.
I've got a description
Yeah.
here of that original boundary line adjustment, but it's,
But what that does, it just takes your deed and returns it to where it was,
Right.
so it cleans it up there, which is perfect.
Well, we have the copies of the plan, it's north arrows, the arrows there, signature blocks on it. Everything looks good on it. I don't see anything. It's about as clear cut as it gets.
it's pretty simple stuff.
Yep. All the documentation's here, so
Such a relief.
it's just shocking.
Well, I've had quite a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry for the hold up.
It's all right. That's all right.
Well, let's open it up to the public, see if anybody's got any questions. All right, I'm gonna close the public session then. A motion,
So move.
second,
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we close the public session. And does anybody have any objections to the application or any issues to be resolved? All right, we have a couple of conditions. One would be the Mylar. You already have the certification of monumentation.
Right.
Sorry, Leanne's not here tonight. She normally, gives me the standard. That's really all there is. All right. Can we get a motion to approve with the condition of the Mylar?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. Change your mind.
Back to where you were.
All right, great.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
Thanks.
Yeah, I do.
After you, King.
Take care.
Thank you.
Sorry, the agenda was one thing I did not print out.
Oh, here.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah.
All right. Next up on the agenda, Jack has requested an amendment to section 3.6.f.13. Which is under storage. I have it here somewhere. Jack did not provide, that I saw, an explanation of why he wanted to change.
On the storage buildings.
It was something to do with storage buildings.
What does he want to change?
Anyone have that, or is that still?
Yeah, I've got it.
You got that, let me, I have his wording
This
changed.
is what it is, but
He
What
has
he
everything
wants
under,
to change,
you know,
I don't
special
know.
permit, no,
Hmm.
so it's.
When you're done reading it, can I
it's
read it?
this,
Second one?
it's this section in the storage buildings.
So,
It had something to do with inside versus outside storage. Give me a minute here.
Did he write anything down, or did he just tell you verbally?
He didn't tell me at all, it was just an email that I had from Leanne, and it was printed out. But there was quite a stack of stuff.
Oh,
this
yeah,
evening,
yeah,
so-
sure.
There it is. Change to storage and/or storage buildings. That is the change you would like.
Okay.
So how does it read right now? So just so we're all aware, 13.
It's in storage buildings right now.
Storage, change to, so he wants it, rather than storage buildings being a special exception in LDR, MDR, LKR, NHB, and OSF, he would like it to read, change to storage and/or storage buildings, meaning that if you were gonna do an outside storage of something, you would need a special exception. So,
Outside storage meaning cars, boats.
Cars, boats, materials, I assume, anything that would basically be.
Is there, I didn't see any, but is there right now a requirement that says you can store 5 boats in your property? 10 boats, 2 boats?
There's not for residential, for private use. So if, say you owned, it was your house and you owned 5 boats, then you could store.
If you don't own 5 boats, but you have 5 boats?
You own 5 boats, let's say, then you could park those in your yard, because it's not.
Okay, but if you don't own those boats.
But if you're, say, charging for storage,
Mhm.
then that's not it's not on the table, it's not a permitted, it's permitted use, it's permitted with a special exception, but unless you had a special exception, you would not be allowed to do that.
Okay.
So it's prohibited, so you would need outside storage of boats you would need a variance, which is much harder than a special exception. So if we change it to, it's listed on the table of uses, it's a permitted use with a special exception, then you can do it, you're just gonna have to go to the zoning board, prove the criteria, no impact on property values, no dust, noise,
Mhm.
glare, water runoff, there's about 5 criteria that they have to prove for a special exception. So basically, it would be expanding the use from, besides a storage building, to allow people to store outside
Things on their property.
on their property.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know why Jack requested it, he didn't provide an explanation.
I think,
Well, it was,
I think we really would want to know why he'd want to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be helpful to me certainly to understand the background. I mean, oftentimes these things come up because we've run into an issue. I'm not aware of an issue that we've run into at this point. Maybe he's seen some things that are concerned, but it doesn't take much to put a little blurb together to say this is why we want to take this approach.
I would say we should table it until we have the opportunity to talk to Jack a little bit and see why he
Yep.
wants this change to be made. And that would seem to be a common sense thing to do
Yep.
it.
Absolutely.
So, I'm comfortable with just calling Jack and asking him, rather than just, or emailing him and having
Sure.
a high-level explanation of what the issue is. If no one has an objection.
No,
Motion to table,
yeah,
so moved.
second.
me.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, next up is short-term rentals. I wasn't presented with anything about this at all. Though I did have somebody ask me about it not too long ago, and I think it's something that we're gonna have to,
Well,
have to deal with it at some point. Yeah.
I've been asked by a couple of different people about whether we should include something in our regs that deals with the short-term rentals. We have had, I'm aware of, some instances in town of Airbnbs that have been disruptive in associations, and so the question and I know a number of towns are
this is,
are looking at it. Conway's looking at it, I understand Wolfboro's looking at it.
The county's looking
Con-
at it.
I'm sorry,
The
yeah,
county as
yeah,
well.
and again, those are bigger communities than Tuftonboro, but it's certainly something that makes sense for us to explore, and
As it
I mean,
stands now, anybody who wants to do an Airbnb does not have to come before Jack and get a permit to do anything, right?
Oh, I don't
no,
think so.
no.
But if
The,
it-
My understanding is that Airbnbs are dealt with in the same way as any rental, okay? So that's,
just a rental.
the question that kind of comes to my mind is, because it's sort of becoming a commercial establishment rather than just a, I'll rent my house to you for a year or whatever. And I haven't talked with Jack about this or with Al Thompson, but, when you have people that are in there for a week
days.
or a few
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
And often you have a lot more people staying in the property than what it was
Designed to do.
built
Right.
for. So, you know, life safety kind of things maybe need to be dealt with differently. I don't know.
Well, I think we can all agree there's nothing wrong with somebody renting their house. You know, in the traditional ways it's been done. You have a house, you rent it to somebody for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And in this area, there's no question, there's a long tradition of people having a cottage or something on the lake that they rent
The summer
a
rental,
week,
sure.
2 week, you know, stuff like that. I think the fine line is what's the difference between that and a hotel? So where does that line exist? And where is it, all right, this is just something that's done as supplemental income or an accessory use of this property, and now it's become, this exists as a commercial short-term rental, as a hotel. And I think, I mean, this is like the number one topic that every planning board in the world is
Who
dealing
brought
with.
this up? Who brought this to you?
It was one of my customers, he's an attorney, he lives down in, he's in an association down in, Melbourne.
Yeah, but it's the same association I've heard about from somebody that lives down there.
Yeah, it's the one.
Like Bear Ice Road?
Yeah, right down in there.
Yeah.
I guess they would have some problem.
Yeah.
So, but if there's an HOA that states that you're not supposed to do that, then you can, you know, make sure that that doesn't happen. But you can't make somebody on Mountain Road who has a house that wants to do vacation rental by owner. I mean, how do you,
Well, that's the question.
I mean, if it's in the covenants, then you have to,
I'm not sure what their covenants are down there.
Covenants are vague.
they're vague.
It happens to be mine.
Yeah, it's your, because I talked to your wife about it last night.
Covenants of what?
Vague.
Vague.
The covenants were written before there was such a thing as
It didn't
Airbnb.
exist.
And they
right.
changed them.
So
We tried and we were.
they anticipate, the covenants address rentals, right? But
It doesn't even address rental, we've allowed it,
Mhm.
as long as it's, and the question is, what's a short-term rental? Is it less than a month? Or is it a short-term rental less than 6 months? You know,
The other problem is how do you track that?
yeah.
I mean, are we?
Well, what area are we talking about?
Colonel Tupton Borough Estates on Senecove.
Yeah, okay.
Center
Cove, okay. Well, you know, I
It's
do
not
short-term
Senecove
rentals.
Association. but it's-
Right.
Okay, and I do weekly rentals, and I have several in Tufton Borough. You know, because of the firm that I work for, I'm instructed to make sure that places that I'm renting meet codes. Fire, you know, smoke detectors and that kind of stuff. I walk through the property. That's the only restrictions that I have when I'm renting short-term rentals in this town in Wolfboro.
Right.
And even for rent by owners, there's tons of them around.
Oh, God.
This Airbnb is something entirely new.
We do.
I, as a planning board member, I don't know whether I should recuse myself or not, being that I do short-term rentals, but as a planning board member, I would like to see some sort of rules,
A
regulations,
definition
how to
of what it
govern
is.
these short-term rentals, including my weekly short-term
well,
rentals.
that's what we're talking about.
Right.
So
We have, in our zoning book, we, have a bed, breakfast, inns, lodging houses, and tourist homes not exceeding 8 guest rooms. We have a definition under temporary residential uses. So, I mean, this is the guy, I think we need to look at that.
What is it listed as? Is it
Okay.
is it
That's on
permitted?
page
Is it
14, okay?
for special exception?
It's temporary residential uses, section B, bed and breakfast inns, comma, lodging houses, comma, and tourist homes not exceeding 8 guest rooms. Permitted in LDR, MDR, special permit in lake residential, LKR, permitted in NHB, and not permitted in OSF or ISC. Okay, so we have an allowance here, but I mean, this is gonna play a role in what we're all doing, I think.
So the short answer is that if it's there and it's listed as a use, and it's listed as it's essentially a commercial use, but it's permitted, it means that technically if somebody wanted to do it, they would have to come in a permitted zone for a site plan review, in which case you go through all of those things. And in a LKR, which is what the majority of these are, it would be a special exception.
mhm.
as this is written, bed and breakfast inns, lodging houses, and tourist homes. So currently, the town does have extremely, that's actually probably more strict than anyone I know of. And to be honest with you, this really isn't in the best interest of the town as this is written, because, I mean, we're a resort economy and a,
Exactly.
second home economy. I mean, that's what makes.
So it's permitted in there, so that would require them to come to get a permit? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a permitted use, but it's listed as, it's essentially a commercial use. So it's permitted, but if you're gonna have a use, you're gonna change the use other than residential on your property, you're gonna go through a site plan review. Just like, the people who came in who had a, sell stuff on their, out of their barn in there.
So I own property in Newport, Rhode Island, and I rent it. So what I have to do is I have to go to the town, apply for a permit, pay $45. The inspector comes out, looks at my house, checks to make sure everything is perfect, everything's working properly. Then I'm able to rent it, and I have to post on my house who's renting it and when. I mean, that's really strict, and I was really aggravated that I had to do this, and it's 30 days. You can't do it for a week, it has to be 30 days or longer, And I didn't know that when I bought the property, because I, wanted to do it for income. But it all worked out, and people do rent it for 1 to 3 months. But I think that would be the way to go, is have somebody come in and do an application and.
Well, you could add a level of accountability to it by,
Mhm.
I think 30 days is kind of excessive.
I do too.
But you could
I
have a
think-
person
especially for here.
you could have a person do, hey, if you wanna rent your house, you're gonna apply for a permit. Jack's gonna come out, he's gonna make sure your house is safe and it's not gonna burn down, it's got smoke detectors or whatever the rules and laws and
Right.
things like that are. And then there's a record of who do we call if there's a problem, whether that's a rental agency, which most of them are done by a rental agency,
Right.
or, Airbnb or whoever it is, who are we
Yep.
calling, your number, your cell number, and such and so forth. And that way there is some level of accountability to it and you know what's going on. And then you have an answer if there's say somebody signs up to do Airbnb and they're having a quote party house, where people rent it to have a party and trash the house and annoy the neighbors, then somebody can go out and it's very simple for the Tufton Borough Police Department at that point. Do you have your rental permit? No. Okay, great. Please leave.
So the way that Newport does it is they actually go on Airbnb and Vacation Rental by Owner and look at who's renting without permission. And you get fined for it. And there was a big lawsuit going on for a woman that was renting it by the day.
Well, now we're talking, so we could also add a
Yeah.
fee to this.
You can
And,
make some money.
Yeah.
You can make some money.
You just gotta
Really
find
can.
some
Yeah.
people who go on the Airbnb and do it. So.
Well, yeah, and this inspector does do that. He goes and checks everybody.
we have to, obviously Newport, Rhode Island versus
It's tough.
Tuftonburg, New Hampshire, they got probably a few
Well,
more
you know,
resources
there's-
than we do.
Yeah.
I don't even say Newport, but, there's people here that are as prominent as Newport people. So,
Oh, yeah.
And the Airbnb is boiling down to, what I've heard from people, the nightly rentals, 2-day rentals, sometimes the week rentals. It's just a lot of strange people coming in and out of neighborhoods
Yeah.
that they don't have any sensitivity to the people around them that live there. And obviously the homeowner that's doing it doesn't have that sensitivity either potentially, or is not there to even see what goes on because they're renting out their home.
Well,
So
and
there's a lot of frustration.
and
Somebody
there are-
has a big problem going on right now. It's been going to court up there with the Airbnb stuff
Mhm.
also. It's one of the biggest areas.
Well, and this party house thing is an issue. The CEO of Airbnb was in the news last week saying that they, at this point, are taking steps to eliminate the party houses. Because that's the biggest issue that they face, is the people that just rent the place to have a big blowout. And,
They have a problem.
But there's a need for this. There's a need for vacation rental by owner. And there
Yes, there
truly
is.
I mean,
Yes,
I'm
yes,
going
there
to
is.
Florida for a month, and that's how I did it, was through
Right.
vacation rental by owner.
Right.
That's
So
what makes it
it's
really
like-
Not only
complicated.
is there a need for it, but the economy in this area,
Yeah.
You need it.
Right.
I mean, it depends on it.
Absolutely.
right,
And-
and so,
Sure.
I'm I don't think we're suggesting that it be eliminated. What we're looking at is because of the change in the way the rentals are done from years ago, and the over the internet stuff, the Airbnb has changed the dynamic of the short-term rentals from the old days where if you wanted to rent a place in Tuftonboro, you call a realtor, right, and say, hey, I'm looking for a place for a week or whatever. So you are dealing through somebody that's fairly geographically close to where the property is, as somebody involved in the process. Airbnb, you're dealing with somebody that's California or wherever, and so there's a difference in connectedness of people to the process, and which I think changes the dynamic. And most I think most people that do Airbnb, perfect, okay, but it's the ones that.
And even the weekly rentals too, there's a ton of weekly rentals in this area,
Right.
the water, and I don't know how you would control that. I mean, this would have to go before the town meeting to be approved.
Well,
I don't think the weekly on the water renter is your problem.
No,
No.
I'm just suggesting that it is, but the same rules will apply to them that applies to Airbnb. How would you distinguish between the two?
Well, I think the issue is, having the ability to know who's renting and who's responsible.
Yeah.
One of the, for a million years, Maxwell Real Estate or Yankee Peddler or whatever, they rented cottages, they rented houses. I rented my first house I ever bought from Maxwell Real Estate.
Right.
First house I ever rented from Maxwell Real Estate. And when there was a problem, the neighbors all knew Maxwell Real Estate or Yankee Peddler or whoever was the one who rented it, and they would call and complain.
Right.
And just like if you had a person who was a problem renter, the next year, they didn't rent it out to them again. Just like when we have a person who's a problem rental.
Sometimes.
We don't always rent it out to them again either. So I mean, in a way, it's self-regulated, but you don't have that with Airbnb.
Right.
I think it would make Jack's job harder. He would have to monitor it, I think.
Oh, no question about
I mean, it
that.
absolutely, or they would have to maybe hire somebody
And
part-time.
especially if we put restrictions that the house, a rental has to meet current codes.
Absolutely.
That's a nightmare for the people who own the house. Current codes with
Well, it's
smoke
only gonna
detectors
help,
today.
it's only gonna help the homeowner though.
There's no
Because,
question
I mean,
about
if
that,
anything
but-
ever happens,
I don't-
then.
No question about that.
I don't think having a permit if you want to rent your house out is, and then you're gonna have it,
Yeah, that's
inspected.
not- that's
Just
not
say
excessive.
you're gonna have smoke detectors.
Right, that's
You're
a
gonna have,
commercial
you're gonna have
operation.
a railing.
Right. That's a commercial operation and it needs to be protected, I understand.
I'm not saying that I would be like, hey, you're gonna have to bring in and make this place ADA compliant and everything else, but, just to make sure the house is safe, and then to have the contact information for the person if there's a problem, Dan, listen, you're the one renting this, whether you do it Airbnb, you're responsible when there's a problem.
Right.
Or whoever you're hiring rented out is, who do we call when there's an issue?
I think that's the easiest solution.
So. well,
And I do like
some-
fines.
I'm
I
sorry?
like fines.
And they should
Yes.
pay for an application
Yeah.
for Jack's time to go out and look at the house.
Well, sure, and then you might not get, isn't many people that would just think it's like a nice idea, but when they find out it's work to do it and you have to
Well,
do stuff.
I know some of the folks around the table went to the land use conference last month, right?
Yeah.
Was there any talk about Airbnb?
I have it right here.
Yeah, somebody
That's
told me
actually-
about that. Was it you that was talking to me about it?
Hmm?
Yeah.
It was.
Okay.
It was.
Yeah.
So, often what happens is that some group, whether it be the State Office of Planning or Regional Planning Commission or somebody comes up with a sample ordinance, or at least some discussion points that can be used in figuring out where you go moving forward. Now, as I
State of
was,
New Jersey, and see how they struck a big blow to Airbnb yesterday in New Jersey.
is that right?
I didn't see the whole thing, but I think it almost pretty much outlawed it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, they must have been getting,
We're never gonna be able to run, Shelton Borough doesn't have the manpower to run around and be like, all right, you rented, say we came up with regulations, you can rent 27 days out of 30, and then, no one's ever gonna be able to figure that out. Jack can't run around and say, all right, now how many days have you done this and this and this?
That's not gonna happen.
Like that.
Right.
But, we can register them, and you're not getting into any legal problem by saying, yeah, this is permitted, but you need a permit to
Mhm.
do it. And then you.
No, just the question, as far as permit, would that infer then it was commercial?
A permit?
Yeah.
No, it would just
Just,
like if you wanna have a campfire, you gotta have a permit.
but do you view the enterprise of Airbnb and short-term rentals as commercial versus residential?
I think the fine tipping point is when the property, to me, becomes more about being rented out than as a residential use.
And that's tax purposes, you have to actually tell your, CPA, how many days did you actually use the property personally? And that's how they determine whether it's really commercial.
That's why it's so vague. in the
It's very
HOA.
vague.
Yeah.
The state says 2 weeks before you have to pay rooms and meals tax. So if you rent your place for 2 weeks or less, you don't have to pay rooms and meals tax. Anything more than that, you have to pay rooms and meals tax, and you have to apply to the state to get a rooms and meals tax number that you're paying to.
That, here?
Yeah?
Yeah.
In New Hampshire, yeah.
Yeah, you get
And
2
all my
weeks free.
rentals, if you look, and also you're required, if you look at all my rentals that are on the MLS system, you'll see that there's a rental there, then there's a rooms and meals tax number
Okay.
on the listing itself,
Mhm.
which we're required by law, by New Hampshire state law to do that.
Okay.
When you sell that property later on, if you're well over your 2 weeks, you're gonna be hit with more taxes because of its use. But did you go through the self-audit a couple of years ago by the state?
Yeah.
State come in, self-audit real estate companies, send them back a list of all the people you rent for, okay, and how much you rent, and all the details of it. So those guys go to sell their house, and they say, oh, you're selling your house today, but this is not your deal. You've rented it, you owe us money now.
So in Florida, when I just rented for the month of February, they included the tax on it, on the rental.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I include the tax.
again,
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
state does their own thing.
Right.
I
And
include
some
the tax
local
on it.
jurisdictions have differences.
Okay.
The only concern I have, if we're gonna start to issue permits, the house is going to have to be up to code, current code,
yeah.
I would think.
We'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are different levels of,
Yeah.
I guess my thought is if the primary reason you want to do this is life safety, okay? So we're talking things like, having smoke detectors and those kinds of things, as opposed to a house that was built in 1980 that I'm coming in today and saying, it doesn't meet the current code. Of course it doesn't, because, particularly electrical codes changed a lot since then. And if you were building it today, you would have to build it differently, but
I don't know, you have to look at it. Yeah, if your windows are painted shut,
yeah,
you can't get a window open.
yeah,
The fire department will, if somebody's renting that house and complains that I can't get the windows open and the owner of the house won't do anything about it, fire department will come down and just shut them right down. That's it. You're out, close it up. So, I don't know what level you go to,
That's what I'm concerned about. What
Conversation
Yeah,
happened
in
there's
to
some
general.
kind of
right?
disclosure and everything that you're signing.
So,
Well, Tony, I have a question about, he raised the issue of commercial or not. With the houses that you guys rent, the owner of the house, is that considered a business?
That's a good
Supplementary.
question. It's
Supplement.
it's supplement income.
Mhm.
And then they probably
But
occupy.
then you are acting as the person who's But what about someone who doesn't go through you, who starts a B and B?
That's a good question.
I don't see
Bill.
how you can say it's not a business if they are doing it themselves.
It's a commercial enterprise.
Yeah, well,
I think
then
that's
that might
good
be a
question
zoning
for
issue,
your,
you know?
For your accountant or the state even, because the state, as I said, after 2 weeks and you continue to rent,
You have to pay.
they now
user
track
rate
it.
tax.
And it's not about our meals and room tax. It's about resale, that's no longer really your secondary home. It's now a business.
The way this
So
is
I'm not sure how
written,
they
Yeah.
determine it.
I mean, it's, the way the town has this written, it's commercial, it's subject to a site plan review.
Mm-hmm,
If you took somebody to court over it, you could
Mhm.
shut them down.
okay.
I mean, legally. I mean, it's black and white, tourist homes not exceeding 8 guest rooms. What's a rental house? It's a tourist home, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, it.
but how many of them have 8 guest rooms?
Well,
You know?
even it's say not exceeding 8 guest
Yeah.
rooms.
Up to 8,
Up to
correct.
Up to
So if you have more than 8, then it
When you
wouldn't.
move
it
to
wouldn't be-
hotel, yeah.
And I can tell you that, I mean, LKR, you know, Lakefront Residential, which is the most common rental that you have in the town of
Mhm,
Tuftonboro,
mhm.
which is any waterfront home, it's not even, I mean, it's permitted by special exception, which isn't exactly a cakewalk. I mean, it's full of butter notifications and
Mhm,
everything
mhm,
else.
mhm.
So,
So it really hasn't been
It is-
enforced.
This
then.
is up to, what, 8 rooms,
Not at
but
all.
they don't say how many people really.
no,
See, that's a problem Jack may have. He may show up at a house and there's 12 people, then it's a 3-bedroom septic. That's a problem.
well, I mean, you can
Well,
see, I mean,
it's for a
and
week.
and clearly that was, I mean, keep in mind, this was written in the 80s.
He's done it
Right.
before,
I mean,
you have to
but-
shut it down.
But keep in mind that, you know, right underneath it, you know, they have a clear hotels and motels
Mhm.
are no use. So clearly that wasn't their intention for this to be the
Right.
Right, it's not.
This is saying, I mean, that's how it's written. I mean, that's technically how that,
Yeah,
I mean, goes. So, I mean, if you had, I mean, as that's written, if you had somebody renting a house next to you and you called Jack and said, they don't have a site plan and they, you know, or a special exception,
mhm,
I mean, technically, you should shut that down.
mhm.
But I think in
But
your
it-
case, you definitely need to work on the covenants and stuff that,
Well, the covenants we tried to amend,
Uh-huh.
but the community didn't want to do that because they don't want to disturb the covenants. We had opposition to it. We almost got it passed, but we
Yeah.
didn't. But the covenant that we're concerned with is for residential use, non-owner occupied can't be commercial. The people who purchase the house say it's not commercial, it's residential. And we went to Jack and asked, how do you look at this? Well, I don't. There isn't any guidelines. There's no.
yeah.
So it's,
So that sounds like you could object,
we are,
according to this.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the,
If we had some ordinance from the town that says it's commercial, you know, then,
It's-
then they can't do it. But
It's-
right now, it's a free-for-all. And I have no objection to people who want to do Airbnb. Unfortunately, it's in an association
Yeah,
that
sure.
complicates everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But it may not be Airbnb. It
I
could
mean,
be.
the question is,
It's
where's,
VRBO.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, where's the tipping point between residential and, yeah,
Well, a lot of people
Bed.
house swap too.
yeah,
Mhm.
bed, breakfast, and lodging house, tourist home. Where's the tipping point between residential, you know, as in I live here and I rent this out. It's been going on for hundreds of years around here. And that,
And rooms for rent, and you look at Cotton Valley. I
every,
mean, every place.
every big house around here used to rent out
I know.
rooms. mean, that's what
I don't
they
know, I
do.
think it's gonna be really
No,
hard to.
you know, you may get some guidelines on that from DDC, okay? Because I know, when I went for my interviews out there on the attorneys that we were hiring, the large firm in Concord was all over that. And having issues up at Sunapee in dealing with that. So some of these people have already started,
Well,
I'm sure they've started forms or
let's do
requirements
this.
for zoning.
We're allowed one free seminar from DTC per year.
Maybe, well, I
That
mentioned
would be-
it, this
that
is the
would be
one I
great.
mentioned, one of them.
Yeah.
There's the one we should do,
Mhm.
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
Well, we could probably do 2 things in that one meeting, so.
All right, let's put them on the books for that, because they're probably, you know, they're deep in this already, dealing with different municipalities.
Well, it's a question we ask of them before they obviously how much you
Yeah.
understand of it, but
Yeah.
I think there'll be,
I mean, that's one that we're gonna have to deal with sooner or later, and we might as well
Absolutely.
just
Right.
deal with it,
Right.
research it.
We can reach out to the municipal association, see if there's any, they're aware of any work that's going on in this area as well.
yeah, write something, I mean, it's a navigational nightmare, they're well into it, so.
I
us to
mean,
try
it's
to
a
revisit
subject of a
something.
lot of towns that are talking about,
Sure.
Conway, North Conway,
Sure.
Laconia, Rochester.
Right.
I hear
And,
about it
and
all the
again,
time.
these are all places that have had rentals for ever, okay? So what's the difference now? The difference is the online exchanges
Computer
have changed the
exchange.
whole dynamic of
Right.
how this happens.
It's
And
changed our
and
life.
the I think the lack of connectedness between people in the process and the location is what makes the difference. As you say, you know, when one of the local realtors is an agent and the people next door have an issue, they know who the rental agent is and they get a hold of them, right?
Yeah,
So when
everybody's,
somebody's made arrangements through an online exchange like that,
Oh, yeah, we
You
call
have-
the
you really
owner.
have to find out who the host is of the
Well,
property, who's hosting,
I-
typically the owner.
yeah,
But I
but-
don't
but-
even think they require fees up front for security deposit stuff with the Airbnb.
No, no.
Well,
So
that's why
it's
having a
really
permit-
easy for people just to book it and anybody to book it.
hmm,
Well, that's why having a permit would be a nice thing, because
Yeah.
if you have a complaint,
You have.
Yeah.
You know where to go, you look up the
and if you don't have
permit,
if you don't have a permit,
you got contact information, you got everything you need, so, yep, I agree.
I've also heard some people talk about this adding to the problem that we don't have a lot of low-cost housing for rental around, that some people are wanting to do this instead of, you know, they will get more money than, say, renting by the year or whatever to other people. So some of those things are coming off the market, and I know that lots of people are having a great deal of difficulty finding suitable places to rent too.
yeah, if you have a place to rent in this area, it goes fast.
It goes
Yeah.
very fast.
Yeah,
I don't have it on the market more than a week or 10 days and it's gone.
Yeah.
It's a year-round rental, a long-term rental.
mhm,
They're in short,
Yep.
short supply.
mhm.
All right, I think we beat that one to death. Last thing on the agenda, we have a couple of potential new members.
Yes.
Bless your hearts.
Keyword potential.
Potential
is right.
yeah.
Just say yes.
It's really a lot of fun.
It's not bad.
See, this is really different from the one that you saw recently, so it makes a
I
difference.
saw the worst one, yeah.
This is about 90% of the meetings is like this, and then the other 10%.
It's about an hour,
It's-
usually.
Yeah.
and it's fun to deal with applications that come in that are fairly straightforward. Tonight's was sort of at the extreme low-intensity end of what's goes on, and the Farm Island application is way at the other end. And we don't get a lot of the way at the other end kind, which is,
Actually, we've had a busy 10 months.
But-
I've
but
been
we
here.
have-
I'm a 9-month member.
I've learned a lot, though. I
Yeah.
enjoyed that Farm Island.
We've done a lot, and we've done a
Well, I-
23 lot subdivision, we've done the Farm Island, we've done undoing boundary line adjustments, where, you know, there's a lot to learn.
Sandwich.
Sandwich.
Oh, no, no more, please.
well, and I introduced George when we started. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Very little. Retired 2013 from working on the Long Island Railroad down in New York City. Did that for 30 years and decided to make this a home. My wife Barbara is on the Capital Improvements Committee, and Bill had approached me, and I'm open, and it's a learning experience for me, so if you can bear with me, I'd like to give it a shot and spend some time learning. It's going to be a bit of a long haul, I think, though.
Well, what we'd like to do, if you're interested, is, what we usually do is Gary has a
Orientation package.
orientation package, and it's kind of a guideline on everything that you'll want to read and go through.
Absolutely.
There's quite a bit of reading, but, a lot of people go through it as they, you learn a lot as the applications come in.
Okay.
And most of these are pretty straightforward boundary line adjustments or minor subdivisions or things like that. And then you'll know when they're getting bad because the attorneys show up. So if I could, what I'd do is have you get together with Gary and kind of go over everything, and he'll give you some information and a lot to read. And after you read a little, see if you still want to do it.
I'll give it my best shot.
All right.
That's all I can say.
And I should say, I got to know George and Barbara up at the castle. They volunteer as docents up there, and they are the most reliable docents we have, I would say. You guys are there every week.
We try to be.
And very dedicated, and you guys do a heck of a job.
And a very nice lady up there too. Her name was Mary.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to say I have the entire Long Island Railroad in my basement.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, a train set?
The previous owner of my house built the Long Island Railroad in my basement, and he couldn't
Really?
get it out. Oh yeah, the whole thing.
Oh, no kidding.
And
Yeah.
he couldn't get it out of the basement. You've seen it.
Oh, it's wonderful.
It's
It
ridiculous.
is great.
And it's sitting in my basement.
Yeah, it is just a great,
Huh.
his land.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's got everything.
It's good that you kept it.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
Those people are nuts.
Anybody who's a hobbyist like that, they really get into it
Crazy.
and they just go overboard.
Yeah.
It becomes part of them. I mean,
it's all there, from the towns,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
so, yep. So, if you ever miss it, you can spin by and get some runs.
yeah, whistles.
Yeah.
Your choice, steam or, electric. You got both.
I'm assuming you all know Carol Wood?
Carol!
I work with Tony. I've been at Maxfield for 26 years. So I don't know if, we had to recuse ourselves, if both of us were sitting on, if that would be a problem. I also am walking distance from Gary's house and Kate's house. I don't know if that's a problem. I'm also a cemetery trustee, maybe that's a problem. And I'm still trying to put this deal together on Farm Island, and we're assuming
Well,
there'll
wait.
probably be an appeal. And maybe another appeal, but again, I don't know where that's going and if I should agree to do this right away, but anyhow. I think because of being a full-time real estate agent for all these years, I've looked at a lot of plans. Read a lot of deeds, seen a lot of boundary line adjustments, people trying to buy property that want to do something different with it, and so they have to come to the town before they can actually close, if contract's subject to getting permission for B&B or whatever. So I think it wouldn't all be that needy, but I think it would be interesting. I think I'd learn a lot. I've learned a lot about cemeteries in
It's fun, isn't it?
a few months.
Quiet places.
Yeah. People are dying to get in.
Yep.
Oh, no. I had to repeat that one, didn't you? Oh, no.
Well, the only way you would both have to recuse yourself is if you were both on a deal and you had direct monetary interest in the application. Just because Maxfield had, well, you probably saw the Farm Island, just because.
I know, and I'm still concerned when if they make an appeal, which is rather likely, that might be one of the issues that maybe Tony should have recused himself. I don't think so, but the attorney could use that.
They could appeal on anything.
I know,
But
I know.
that would be a tough one.
Yeah, the state rules for recusing yourself or you have an interest in it dictated that I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to recuse myself. I wasn't going to benefit by it personally or financially or any,
But the company would.
but
That we work
I don't,
for.
I'm an independent contractor. I have no part of the company. I just signed my license there, as the state says.
Well, hopefully that won't be, hopefully there'll be no appeal,
And
but,
I'm not, and the company's, well, it's still Maxwell Real Estate, but it's not owned by him anymore.
that's true.
Yeah, that was big news.
Yeah, who owns it?
Randy Barker
Randy Parker.
Oh.
So,
He bought it,
Really?
everything?
Yeah.
No.
and his son John.
Oh my God, when did that happen? I didn't,
Friday.
oh, okay, that's.
Oh, well, that
Just
makes.
That's why I didn't
How did I know that?
Well,
I'll
it's
think about
official,
Friday.
it's official
Oh my
Friday.
God,
It was
okay.
official Friday.
That's
but-
awesome.
last Friday, yeah.
Well, Chip was not able to keep going.
No.
Yeah.
It was too hard for him.
This
We're
is great
we're
news.
fortunate that it was Randy and his son who bought it, rather than a franchise or
Yeah.
somebody else that's not familiar with the area and make some changes, so everything's gonna stay the same according to Randy and Jonathan,
That's
and
such
all the
great
people are gonna
news.
still be there,
We
and
all still have our jobs and our
all
desks.
still have our jobs,
Yeah.
and wants to, continue.
Great.
Maxfield has an impeccable name in this area, and
Absolutely.
he's kept the name, and we'll go
Well,
forward.
that's good news. That's really good news.
As another note, but I don't know what I should say, so I'm jinxing myself. Pier 19 is officially under agreement again.
Yeah, you need another pen?
Yeah.
Is it a new person?
Is it the same people?
Nope.
Are they gonna
Somebody
keep
keep
it a
it
store
They
and
wanna keep
stuff?
it as a store.
Thank God.
They gotta go before the ZBA according to Jack first, and then come before us.
Great.
And I'll have to recuse myself.
Do they want to
because I-
have a store 12 months a year?
I hope so.
Well, they're talking about developing it into that, yes.
And like a
It's
restaurant
gonna,
or?
they're gonna enhance it. They're talking like they're gonna enhance it, put other things in there, to make it a 12-month operation.
That would be great.
We
We'll
need
see.
it. We totally.
Like I said, I hope I
The
didn't
winter
jinx
time is so
myself.
tough,
Isn't it
tough
here?
location.
I
Well,
know, but if you're here full
but
time.
I
you need
know,
places
but,
to eat.
but look at, yes, but look at places that work. Skelly's works, and why does Skelly's work? Because it's got those two lakefront subdivisions close by. Yeah,
Right there.
that, right around the
I
corner.
mean, everybody drives down that road.
Yeah.
But look at
yeah.
Bucky's and, all those
Bucks.
places.
But,
Bucks.
but you
It's
gotta
not
remember,
Buc-ee's.
between
What is it?
Wolfboro,
Bucks.
Just packs it in.
Bucky's, yeah, Bucky's. Between Wolfboro and Skelly's, there is nothing.
And
That's right.
Pinecone.
Right.
Pinecone's
Well, the
packed.
Pinecone.
Right.
We had
Yes.
to turn around the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pinecone,
yeah.
because it was so busy.
No, I
We
don't
need
I don't
places.
disagree.
We got room
do,
for it.
we do.
Yeah.
No.
But
Oh, I'm
it
so
takes,
excited.
it
It's two
takes a
good things.
special
Well,
owner, I think,
as far as
to make
travel goes-
a 12-month operation work in.
Gary
in
has
a lot of
material
this.
for you, is what he's trying to say.
Carol, we'd love to have you, but I think your point is well taken on the Farm Island thing. Till that, I think is probably put to bed.
Well,
I don't wanna jinx it.
No,
That,
but-
what do you,
We have about
you only-
14 more days.
I think it's till the 16th of
Yeah,
November.
it's 30 days.
30 days,
30
16th to
days, yeah.
17th.
Well, generally, new people coming
Oh, well, that's
into the
like
fold
only another 10
would
days.
come on as alternates,
Yeah,
Yep.
which is a good way to get to get an understanding of what goes on. Plus, it's important for the board so that if we have members absent, as we do occasionally, that we can seat one of the alternates as a voting member for the meeting and have a quorum. We've had several times in recent memory where we haven't been able to conduct business because we didn't have a quorum.
Well, in the last Farm Island meeting we had, they almost didn't go ahead with the meeting because we were.
Because of me.
I can't
I
blame
couldn't
you.
Well,
believe
no, no.
that was on, like, I can't believe you talked about it.
That wasn't a quorum issue, though. That was just
Yeah,
that
that
was
was just
that
the
was, that was a smaller number of people, which means that
There were
that
more
conceivably, if there was opposition on the board,
Right.
they would have been up against a
My daughter
bigger.
had just had her baby. I was
Yeah.
at Douglas one.
No, we
one
didn't.
of Douglas. I was
That's-
like,
that's-
It's
That's
not.
fine. That's
I'm
fine.
just saying, in
No, I
that
know.
situation, we could
Yeah.
have, we
Yeah.
could have an alternate, we could have.
I can tell you, by the way, first meeting in December, I'm not gonna be here. And
I
other
knew he was
people.
gonna say he's going on vacation.
No, that's
Workshop.
the annual Festival of Trees.
What's the date? Is that like the
The
5th
fifth.
of December?
Yes.
I'll be in Chicago.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know what?
I'll have
I'll
some
be
of the
awake
months,
that
I'll
night
come to
too.
Christmas party.
Oh, I
Yeah.
guess we're not gonna have a meeting that night.
Carol, you're in.
So we may not have a meeting, but
Yeah.
anyway,
And I'm gone.
I'll
the month
vote
of
yes on
February.
everything.
Yeah, we may want to move that meeting.
All right.
around.
Yeah.
I'll
well,
be there too, Bill, so, you know.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, I
Yeah.
work in,
Well, we can talk about all that now.
yeah,
So,
We need alternates.
So
Yes,
give
we
her
do.
Elena information so she could review it.
I don't have it with me.
Oh, no, yeah, I know, but.
I have one package left, I'll get another package.
Can you
The
make me a
the
package?
orientation, by the way, is, it's the RSA's, it's the state of New Hampshire laws. It's all of our booklets on subdivision, ZBA, zoning ordinance. You'll see other papers I developed in there about websites to go to,
Oh,
about
that
these
would
kind
be
of guys right
interesting.
here, New Hampshire municipal that we deal with. Just a lot of places you can go to get information and do more study. Because when you look at some of our stuff, you'll find it kind of dry or it doesn't really complete it.
Did you get one from
So
No.
that's what that details, and it's probably about
So.
30
Oh,
to
yes,
40
that's
minutes
right.
sit down with you.
yeah.
And it just helps you get right here, it's quick.
I never knew a pre-Gary, but I never got.
Actually did that
That would have
municipal.
been actually a
No,
training.
that's
Yeah,
why
that was
he
pretty- you were
developed
pretty
it,
good.
because it was
Right.
very
No,
clear that we
all
were
that.
coming on and going like,
Yeah.
well,
That was helpful.
Well, I'm gonna ask him for a copy just so I can.
Well, sure, good idea.
Make-
you gotta do some more copies for the rest of us.
Do you mind?
Why, what are you missing? I mean,
A lot of that
Oh, a
stuff.
lot
oh,
of
you
that
you don't
stuff.
have any of this? Okay.
Some of it I do.
They
but
don't
not all.
know what they're
So
missing because
Jackie
they don't
wants
have
my
it.
charge me, try to charge me.
I'll pay for it.
No, no, I'll see Jack, I'll go see Jackie and she handles, she has all the books.
Well,
So,
the books I have, but the other
All the other-
information.
oh, the
is
other
good
stuff, the tape, yeah, okay, I can get that. You have this, you
Yeah, I got
you have
that.
this?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you have this guy?
Mhm.
Okay, you have this guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so the other stuff is just stuff I've tabulated in for locals.
Yeah, that would be
You have that, so
interesting.
you have most everything,
I
but-
must-
yeah. Yeah, well, okay, I'll get you.
Yeah.
The other thing that's gonna be on the horizon is, as soon as I get around to filling out the application for a site plan review, I purchased the property next to our showroom down in Milton Village, which its retail sales is permitted, but before I can do anything, and we're not making any material changes to the property, we're just changing the use from residential
Residential.
to retail sales. I'm gonna have to come before the board, which I will obviously have to recuse myself and such and so forth, so.
Which one is, you got the one at the dam?
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
Dan.
from Ray Everest.
Ray, oh, you
Yeah.
bought it from Ray?
Yeah,
Oh.
we should do a store.
Wanna? I talked to Ken today about the general store.
Mhm.
We talked a little bit about that. I really want to. I'll do a store with you.
All right,
I
there
will.
was a store once, it can be a store
Yep,
again.
I'll do it. Let's
Yes.
talk.
Was that a store?
Store.
Yeah, it was a store, and a
real
post
country
office,
store.
and
Like that.
Really, with barrels of pickles?
telephone switch.
Yes.
Switchboard.
You're gonna take the Brattleboro Deli, if
Yep.
anyone is done, pick it up, move it to my.
Did you ever go into Ernie Piper's store?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, now
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that would be fun to
I go in at 1 in the
recreate.
morning, every morning.
Yep,
Yeah,
I used to walk there every day.
On the
Yeah.
corner of Tuftonboro Neck Road and Mile 9. That first building.
Yep, and it used to be the post office.
That's right.
He was the post office dude too.
But the town needs like a Molten Borough general store, like that kind of
Right,
thing.
that
Did
one
they
up
even
there,
have
that would be
parking in?
fun.
Did they
Wouldn't
clear
it?
out a lot
It would
inside
be really fun.
of that building?
They they cut a driveway in.
Yeah, I saw the driveway.
But it would have to be,
Right.
engineered, I mean, to do it right, it
Yeah,
needs to be,
okay.
it's only 320 feet off the road, to really utilize, but we make it work. It's nice and flat, I think it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what.
but it's beautiful property.
To work.
Same in Sunday.
Yeah.
Is it worth it? Should I-
I mean, it's interesting,
Oh,
sure,
I'm just gonna go.
sure. And
Go to-
guys across the street put on a huge spread,
Okay.
so, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful.
I might actually go this year too.
I've never
Yeah.
been.
I stopped and visited the guys today, and they were dumping the salmon, and they had some nice.
Yep.
nice fish.
When is that happening?
Sunday.
They're
Sunday.
stripping- Oh, they're stripping now?
Salmon stripping this Sunday, yeah.
This isn't that early?
It's a little bit-
No, it's,
Usually the Sunday after Thanksgiving.
no, it's this same second Sunday in
Remember?
November. I don't remember what time it is, so, there's an article in the Tupperville Times about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Probably have the time.
yeah, I'm not gonna be around something. I'm
Or-
in Nantucket.
Good for you.
Wow, it's
Maybe
not a happy occasion.
next meeting,
Memorial.
That's a good question.
His wife's cousin.
The next meeting would be, does anybody have a calendar?
2 weeks.
It's
The 21st.
21st
Yep.
of November.
It'd be November the 21st, 7 o'clock right here.
okay, thank you.
And with that, can I get a motion to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now, what we really have to wonder about is Leanne got